4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see if we actually get live. That sounds like it. Great. Sounds working. Hey there, friends. Good morning. I put a bit too much water in to my coffee. Is that going to be enough? That's still too much for a proper cup of coffee. There, we seem to be hitting the spot. How can I live to be 100, healthy, capable, and happy? How? You tell me. Is there a magic formula? I don't think so. Do we know things about getting to 100 that can help us figure out how to live healthier, longer, more fruitful lives? Probably, right now. And is it worthwhile to talk about those things and actually understand what makes people tick who live to be 100 and how they live and why they actually manage to get to that age, barring their genetic predisposition to maybe skip a couple of diseases or age a bit slower chronologically, not chronologically, biologically speaking, than some of the others. Like you and me, I think there's a lot to be said about thinking of that. But the baseline here still is that we need to have a general understanding of our health and fitness so that we can age, grow older, while being able, capable, competent, and self-sufficient, wouldn't you say? So for those of you who are watching, my name is Toby. I am 41 years old and I train to live an active, self-sufficient, and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep. I try to get between 7 and 9 hours in a night. I do so by minding what I eat. I try to eat within my energy balance. I try to eat whole foods, generally, quite a lot of plant-based foods. And I try to eat sufficient fiber and nutrients from foods rather than supplementing, as well as trying to hit my protein goals on specifically days that I train with weights to support my muscle building and strength building. But in general, just eat sufficient of all the macronutrients and make better choices between carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So for fats, for example, I've been trying to skip as many saturated fats recently as I can in favor of polyunsaturated fats to boost my general health and fitness. I also work out, or I try to move a lot. I try to move at least, between 1 and 2 hours a day. That includes about 30 minutes of exercise first thing in the morning. Sometimes that's mobility, like on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, that is either kettlebell or running. And then I try to add on a bit of walking, at least for 30 to 60 minutes throughout the day, and then all kinds of other things like taking the stairs or just walking somewhere, cycling somewhere, doing something physically active, taking a quick exercise snack by doing some push-ups or pull-ups or squats or any kind of just, physical movement to make sure that my body moves throughout the day. I'm invested in my friendships and my connections with my family, with my friends, with my communities, my contributions there, and I'm invested in learning new things. I'm invested in developing skills as a form of mental exercise and ability to make sure that I don't only physically train and keep active, but also mentally train and keep active. And I believe dancing is actually one of the best activities to do because it stimulates both the mind and the body in connection because of the way our brain determines how we move. But I get ahead of myself. So if you're interested in any of that, you go ahead and hit like, subscribe to my channel, and we can continue the conversation. I'm basically here every day. I usually do a podcast like this on the weekend, specifically on Sunday, because the running that I do outside. So there's no real point in me setting up my home gym for recording or for a live stream. So we stand in the kitchen and we talk about all these wonderful topics of health, fitness, and longevity. So yeah, here we are. Today's training, I'm going to be, did I already say like and subscribe? I think I did, but if you haven't yet, go ahead and do that. Today's training is going to be sprints. It's going to be sets of 1 minute sprints, 1 minute rest, so that's 20 minutes in total. And I'm going to be doing some plyometrics for some explosiveness, some jumps, and some resistance band work. And that's going to be the bulk of the work this morning. And I'm going to do that nice and outdoors. I'm looking forward to that. Nothing special, nothing crazy, just working on a different kind of adaptation than I usually would, because I am interested in maintaining both endurance but also speed and agility, and specifically speed and a level of explosiveness to bring, to generate force quickly. So you'll also start to see that a little bit in my, at least one of my weekly kettlebell trainings, where I'll work more on moving the weight fast rather than just moving the weight, or rather than focusing on conditioning, focusing more on generating that force quickly through different movements and through different planes of motion. And that's just a different modality of training and a fun thing to pursue. But today, let's take a bird's eye view at all of the big topics, because I started off by asking, well, how can I live to be 100 and be healthy, capable, and happy, right? And it always comes back to this insight that's important for us to remember, is that when it comes to health and fitness, we tend to focus on the things that we can do ourselves, which is sleep, food, moving. And that makes sense because health and fitness, for a large part, is very much dependent on how well we maintain our body, how well we take care of the garden of our mind, right? But what we tend to skip is the fact that actually we exist in a space with other human beings, and that we are very capable of working together, of collaborating, of connecting, and of doing great things together. It is our connection to other people that actually makes us humans stand out amongst all of the other creatures, maybe on this planet even, because of our ability to trust, to collaborate, to cooperate, and to live in this large society. So what happens when we only focus on ourselves and on how good we're doing without actually considering who the people we love and care about, how they're doing, how our friends are doing, our communities are doing, how the people we inhabit this space with, so for example the street that I live in or the village that I live in, how they are doing, then we are missing part of the equation. So the other half of health, fitness, and longevity is understanding our connection and our place in our communities and in the lives of other people, and then thinking about the contributions that we are making in those spaces. How am I investing in the people I love and care about? How am I investing in my friendships? How am I investing into my communities directly or indirectly? And by investing, I don't mean money. I mean, what do we bring to the table? And I think we underestimate how valuable and important actually our contributions can be. I think we underestimate how necessary and important it is that we keep engaging and keep talking and keep meeting and keep spending time with people. And the final one there is also our development, our learning, because sleep, food, and movement generally relate to fitness as a topic. But when it comes to learning and developing something like creative writing or painting or origami, folding, or chess, or in my case like judo, something physical, dancing, we talked about different things or hobbies, knowledge even, if you are a history buff or a geography buff or a science buff, right? But finding time and energy to develop your mind, to learn new things, to grow new pathways, new understanding of the world through knowledge, through study, through practice, something physical. I always prefer more to do something that involves my hands or my body with something like this. Music, a musical instrument, for example, learning to play that. Those 5 things taken together make a more holistic view of health, fitness, longevity possible, right? But we tend to focus on the first 3, and usually we tend to focus on 2 of the 3, which is food and movement, right? But we could actually look at these 5 topics and try to understand how we're doing in those in relation to our health and fitness. Anyway, food for thought, right? Because we can talk about, how well we're sleeping, and there are good reasons to talk about how well we're sleeping. For example, it reduces our risk of, all-cause mortality. If we sleep less, there are instances where the time changes, right? Wintertime, summertime, and what happens, the incidence of cardiac incidence goes up. Why? Rises. Why? Well, because there's a relationship between sleep and how well our bodies function, right? Good sleep is important for our mood, for our outlook on life, and for our recovery from both the physical and psychological stresses life imposes on us. We sleep better, we're better able to cope and deal with the challenges of the day. It's just that simple. And to get better sleep, it's important to focus on quality. Is it dark? Is it quiet? Is it cool in the room? Are we undisturbed? And regularity. Do we go to bed at the same time every day? Do we wake up at the same time every day? Do we have the same, more or less, number of hours of sleep every day? This is why I try to make such a big point out of sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night. That usually works out better in winter than in summer, because in winter it's darker earlier and sunrise is later, so you have more darkness to kind of help stimulate sleep. And in summer it's light later, so getting to bed early getting to bed early is hard. And you can see I actually haven't hit 7 hours of sleep the whole week. And I feel that. I would like to. It's just not happening for some reason. So I hope this week we're going to be able to do a lot better in that regard. And when it comes to food, like the choices we make in between the different types of foods also matter. But it's important, when it comes to what we eat, that we choose whole foods, unprocessed foods, because, that's what our bodies were made to consume. I don't think that there's really anything wrong with some of the processed and even ultra-processed foods that are out there. But the case in point is that when we switch to more whole foods and unprocessed foods, our bodies tend to work better, okay? So yeah, junk once in a while, it's completely fine. Like I talked about the Oreos I had the other day and Coca-Cola, and last week a bag of crisps. And it's all in moderation, right? Like there's nothing wrong with once in a while having something that we enjoy. I had a beer yesterday, okay, great. And then we move on, but I don't drink beer every day. Maybe once a month, once in a while. There's a glass there for our pleasure and enjoyment. And that's what these things are there for in life. It's the same with, those kinds of foods. But generally, like, out of the 21 meals that I will most likely have during a week, I think about 19 of those are going to be, whole foods and unprocessed foods that are put together with the intention of focusing on a specific balance of micro and macronutrients to keep me healthy and fit. I also try to pick healthier fats, so I did a bit of research myself on different types of fats in foods and what I would want to eat and what I would want to avoid. And boy, was that somewhat eye-opening. I think overall we were already pretty much on the good side, but I'm trying to eat more unsaturated poly and monounsaturated fats, and trying to limit everything else, or the saturated fats, and that by definition means limiting animal products. I had no idea, but that has changed the composition of my meals entirely. Also what the centerpieces of my meals have become now versus 2 or 3 months ago. It's quite different, but I think with good effects. For example, I am not that mindful of my food, but I found that I've been able to maintain my physical composition relatively well without actually having to track everything that I'm eating. And I also experience a level of satiatedness, satiety throughout the day, especially when I have these high fiber, nutrient dense, predominantly plant-based foods and meals mixed in. Mind you, I eat fish, I eat meat throughout the week. I don't skip it entirely, but it's become less of the mainstay and more of a part of a larger meal, so a smaller portion mixed in with other ingredients. And that seems to be working well. And within defining all of the nutrients that we need, creating a composition of meals within the energy balance. That's important, because one thing is for sure, there's a baseline energy that we consume in a day, and we would want to stick to that. We want to eat within that. We want to move sufficiently to maintain that energy balance. And we don't want to overeat, because whatever we overeat, we start to store as fat on our body. And weight gain and waist circumference increase are good markers of decreasing metabolic health. Doesn't mean you're unhealthy, just means you're not as healthy as you could be, right? And then there's movement, right? Because we just talked about metabolic health, but movement is a surefire way to improve our metabolic health, our ability to transform food into energy and to actually use our bodies, right? Movement is a good way to improve our insulin sensitivity, so the ease with which we can get glucose out of our bloodstream into our cells for energy, so that what we eat can actually be used and consumed for energy. And you know, moving more is related to better cognitive function. It's not going to make us an Einstein, but it is going to um, help us use what's there better and maybe keep it healthier longer, right? And there's just generally a positive correlation between movement and our mental health. So that's also important to keep in mind, right? That if we are moving sufficiently, we are likely to maybe have a more positive outlook on life. So if we're sleeping well and moving sufficiently, we get a double boost on our mood and our outlook on life. Okay, it's a very simple um, outlay of how the world works, I think, and it's also just relatively straightforward in terms of what we want to do with our lives and how we can live our lives. And these three things are things that we already do. Everyone sleeps, everyone eats, and everyone moves somewhat sometimes. So it's more a question of understanding how we can do them better within the demands, commitments, and responsibilities that we have for living in our lifetime, okay? In our 24 hours in a day, or in the 168 hours that make up a week. How can we optimize the time we're already investing in sleeping and eating and moving to get more out of it? Like I said, I try to move around 2, maybe a bit more hours every day. But, oh boy, it actually sounds like it's raining and I'm supposed to be outside training. So it's going to be interesting. I try to move 2.5 hours in a day. That doesn't mean you have to. It just means that we need to think about what we want to get out of the things that we do already to improve our health and fitness. So, for example, if we're having trouble sleeping, what are we doing, in the 1 to 2 hours before we sleep? What are we doing when we wake up? How does food influence our sleep and our sleeping pattern? That's an important question to ask ourselves. The same goes for food. What are we eating and why are we eating it? Are we continuously eating? Are we eating a lot of, fresh whole foods? Like I always have all of this fruit and vegetables laid out here before me. Usually by the end of the week or halfway through the week, a lot of this is gone and it needs to be restocked, but it all gets eaten throughout the week. And there are a lot of fibers and nutrients in there, but the difference with this is I can eat 2 or 3 bananas and I will be relatively satiated. Usually after one already, I don't feel like eating another one. Or I can eat a whole sleeve of Oreos. The thing is, with a banana, I feel full and satiated. It's 100 calories. There's also a lot of fibers in there, fruit sugars, other nutrients that exist in the banana that I'm eating. Whereas when I eat a whole sleeve of, a snack like that, an ultra-processed snack, there are a lot of sugars, chemicals, not a lot of fibers in there. I could just keep on eating them. And there's probably twice the volume there, but there's also 3 times the calories, maybe even 4 times the calories that I would get out of a banana. So you see the difference, the impact a different choice in food can have. I could eat 2. I could also eat a banana and a kiwi, or a banana, kiwi, and an apple. Probably have the same amount of calories as a sleeve of cookies, but there would be a very different nutrient profile. There'd be a lot of sugar in there, but since I'm active for 2.5 hours in the day, I don't think that would matter that much because there's also a lot of sugar in the cookies. But there would be a lot of benefits in terms of fibers and vitamins, minerals, and nutrients in the foods that I'm eating there. Okay? And where can we find more space to move? Is that on our commute, on our way out? Do we, how should I put that? Do we take 10 minutes extra in the morning to walk a little bit further on our way to the train station or the metro station? Or do we do it on our way back? Do we take the stairs at work? Do we take 15 minutes out of our lunch break? Do we eat our food and then go for a 15-minute walk? Even if it's just around the building and take the stairs back upstairs, for example. All of these little things will make a big difference in the amount of time we spend moving in a day and what that's going to do and mean for us in terms of our health and fitness in the short and long term. Okay? But we also talked about friendships and about developing ourselves. So, how frequently do we see our friends? How often do we reach out to the people we love and care about? I think it's important to keep in mind that try to connect at least once a week with people we care about. Whether that's possible or not is another thing, but if you do that, maybe whether it's possible or not, shouldn't concern us too much as the intention to do that, because we set ourselves up for maybe 52 moments of connection, and even if we only get to 26, right? So even if we only get to see people every other week, right? That's still a lot of moments to chat, discuss life, do something, having that active social life. And this doesn't have to be just family, right? An obligatory family connection. This could be things that you set up for yourself, which is important to do. And I know I have 2 small kids myself. It's difficult because time with kids is very demanding and it changes different aspects of your social life. But even there, also taking turns in going out and seeing friends, spending time with people you love and care about. It's very important, okay? And learning new things. I recently took up judo again. Hey, Daniel, poor man's gym. Good morning, thanks for dropping by. I hope you're doing well, and I hope the training keeps going well, and I hope that the sleep isn't evading you. And if it is, then maybe listening to me will put you right to sleep in about 10 minutes. But I hope everything's all right over where you are. In the States, I'm actually wrapping up at 6:45 a.m. here, and I'm going to go out for my runs and other exercises this morning, sprints, and doing some intervals to work on that speed and ability that otherwise might fade away with age. So we were talking about finding those hobbies and those things to work on, right? Like I recently started judo, and judo is a great combination if you think about it, especially for longevity, because it is a sport. We're physically active, right? It's like any training. It has a warming up. You have some technique, some interaction, and then a bit of, how should I put it, we call it randori, where you wrestle each other to the ground and try to create a lock or a hold. I think with the adults, we don't do standing randori that much. Nobody wants to fall that much or that often. And then there's also the social aspect, because it's a group of adults. We sit and talk afterwards and during, and you learn something from each other, and everyone has a good time, and it's a social group, a connection. But there's also skill involved, right? Like I said, there are like different techniques that you learn and practice. So you do those 3 things, and look at that, you're hitting a movement marker, you're hitting a community marker, and you're hitting a learning marker. If you do that, say painting or origami or creative writing in a club, in a classroom, in a lesson language learning dance class, think about it. You're hitting multiple markers of this longevity journey. So the social aspect usually is interwoven into some of the activities we choose, unless we choose to do activities on our own solo activities, like food, for example. So cooking for other people, food is a social construct as well. So if we're able to do that together, and if we're able to learn something about cooking, again, we're combining multiple of these aspects of longevity into one activity, okay? But in order to get there, we need to understand what the different activities are and then look for ways to combine them. If you go on a camping trip, you have food, movement, sleep, social connection. And if you're learning something about nature, then you're educating yourself as well. You've got all 5 of them in a weekend. You don't have to do all 5 every day, right? But just be mindful that over the course of the week, you're hitting all of those markers for longevity. That's all I have for you today. I hope the rain stopped this morning. There are a lot of small changes we can make. I think I need to make a couple of shorts and videos about all of these small changes to keep us going and to keep us inspired in terms of what we can do, but I'll figure out how to do that while I'm on holidays. I feel my mental space is a bit limited at the moment, so I also feel I need a break probably. I just want to say thanks for dropping by this morning. Poor man's Jim. I can see that you're a #1 fan or a top fan in chat. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a good weekend. And I hope you're going to have a good Sunday tomorrow when you wake up. For everyone else who's watching, just remember, we're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. This person we are today is going to get us to where we're going to be tomorrow. And a bit of kindness is going to go a long way. All right? There are enough people out there who want to put us down, so we lift ourselves up. And the only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. And I can help you do that if you like it and subscribe to my channel. Do you like how I slid that in there at the end? Be well, take care, thanks for dropping by. And moving is definitely a big part of the longevity challenge. And I appreciate you answering the poll. Remember to be well, hit like, subscribe, and drop by tomorrow for another kettlebell session, friend. Take care and have a great Saturday night and Sunday. All right? Subscribe.